Hello, everybody. Good morning. This interview takes the cake for earliest interview for me. I've had some really late ones when I was overseas, but this is the earliest one on American soil. So thank you so much for joining me. Today, I'm going to be speaking to a fascinating, outspoken young lady who has caught my attention. I actually was seeing her content a long time ago on TikTok, where her account is extremely popular. And now she's making her way through different social media avenues. She's on Instagram, obviously. She's started a YouTube page, and it is called Life After USSR Podcast. So she focuses on, what it's like to be a Caucasian living in America. Wow. But her thing is that she actually lived there. She grew up in the Caucasus, overseas, from where I'm standing anyways. And she has some really, in my personal opinion, great insight into, what goes on there. If you ever check out her YouTube, she literally does analysis of what's going on in different headlights and different current events. So for someone like me who has a little bit of a disadvantage in regards to putting things in context, it's really helpful. Obviously, it comes with her opinion and her kind of experience, and that's all of us, even my page. But it's extremely unique in that she's sharing her perspective and her thoughts on everything, and she's female. And I'm not trying to say that this is, outrageous or just so different, but it is a male predominant space, this Caucasian sort of identity space. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I'm so happy. There's a lot of names here that I don't really recognize, so welcome. That's about as much as I'm comfortable saying in Circassian. Another thing about our guest is that while she does, show her face, her identity is not known. So I am going to be calling her sister during this conversation. I don't even know her first name. I just know that she lives in America. This is something that I want to highlight quickly because, I get a lot of comments about when I mention safety, people find that offensive sometimes, why would anybody feel the need to be, keeping themselves safe? But, she literally, that's how she operates. And she's not the only one. I've had one other anonymous guest and he didn't show his face at all. So, that's the experience that I have. So I'm just waiting for her to come on. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined again. Today, if you notice, I'm wearing a cool Caucasus. So she said, do you know if she is Chechen? So I don't know exactly what part of the Caucasus she's from. She's not really sharing that information, not even on the internet. It's just that she presents herself as somebody who's lived in the Caucasus. So maybe when we get to know her a little bit, she'll give us, some crumbs as to her, ethnicity. And then from there, we can take it. We can take it from there, I should say. I'm wearing a cool sweater from my shop. This is one of my favorites, designs that I made. I just wanted to highlight that. I'm waiting for her to log on. Hopefully she's okay. Here, let me see if she's on. Nope, not yet. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I wanted to, I'm thinking, sorry, I didn't space out, but I am thinking. So before she comes on, I did want to mention that today is the last day of, and I was hesitating all week to kind of say something about this topic, but just quickly, while before she comes on, today is the last day in kind of the West, I should say, for Suicide Awareness Week. And I just wanted to come on and say something quickly that topic is, I know, extremely taboo for certain groups of people within our respective communities. As a visibly Muslim woman who has a Caucasian background, it's just not something that we talk about. It's not something that people want to hear about. I'm not going to be controversial about this topic. I just want to extend a little bit of compassion and empathy. If there's anybody, because I have people on this page who are not Caucasian, who are not, from all types of backgrounds. If there's anybody out there who has struggled with this subject, I just want you to know that we want you here. You're important, you're special. You were put here for a reason, and any problems that you have, you can find a solution for. There's nothing that is going on in your life that there isn't a solution for, okay? It's just about having a support system and the health to keep you going, okay? So I'm gonna send her a message because I do not see her signing on. Okay. Okay, so hopefully she'll be on quick. Russia, go out of Kafkas. Yeah, I got a lot of Kafkas pride today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. She'll be hopefully on in a minute. Sometimes there's connection issues. Oh, there she is. Okay, great. All right, hopefully she'll just be able to connect. We have had here connection issues before, but that's okay. Oh, yay! You are. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm happy to see you. So lovely. Look at you.
I know. It's so nice to talk to you. We've been chatting mostly
I
via
know.
Instagram chats and sending audios, but I'm so happy to see
I
you.
know. Same here. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know, it's our weekend. It's such a, time to relax and everything, but I really appreciate you being, um, comfortable to come on here and talk with me. I am so excited to hear about basically anything you have to say. You chose some really great questions, so I'm super looking forward to hearing whatever it is that you have in mind.
Me too.
All right, awesome. So I introduced you to the audience, and we have a nice little group joining. In your bio, you said you were just a Caucasian girl living in America. Your mission in life is to make the lives of men and women from the former USSR world better by unlocking the generational cell door. That's a very strong image. Through educational and inspirational content so they can decide for themselves if they want to come out. That you're only a vessel to make that happen and God is the ultimate force. I mean, the strength within those few sentences is very, it's very potent. So let's get to it because, like I said, I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. Okay, so the first question is, have you been to the Caucasus? How did it feel to be there? Memorable experiences? And then, of course, the question says, do you plan to go back? Why or why not? So you can just go ahead and answer that to your comfort.
I will try not to get
Of course,
emotional
of course.
answering this question. And I think every time I think about the Caucasus, I think that it would be incredibly hard to live away from the mountains for a very long period of time. And sadly, that's the reality of my life. I left Russia not by my own volition, and I've settled in the United States and been living here for some time. But I do have a lot of fond memories of the Caucasus, and let me share one memorable experience. So when I was a little girl, I was with my mom and my family. We went on a trip, and we were driving by Caucasian mountains, and I remember thinking, "Wow, I wish that one day I can live up high in the mountains, and I would be extremely happy." My
Oh,
mom looked at me and she giggled. She said, "Well, you don't know what you're wishing for. You don't know how hard it is to actually live that high up in the mountains." But in my mind, I thought, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I always reflect to that moment in my life, and I think about how passionate I was as a little girl about this, you know, just about the mountains. And I think now as an adult, I actually understand why. I think there is there is something so magnificent, something so incredible about looking up at the top of the mountain, or thinking about what's behind that mountain, and inspiring yourself to achieve higher. And yeah, that was one of the most memorable experiences that I've had as a little girl.
wow. And how does that, I mean, we're all climbing mountains in our lives, right? Metaphorical mountains. Do you feel like you have, I mean, it seems like you've really internalized this concept of, aiming and reaching and maybe trying to see what's on the other side. Maybe this is what your, you know,
Yeah.
the emotional.
Yeah, when you see mountains so majestically reaching up in the sky, you wish for something bigger than yourself. And ultimately, you and I live in America, and we know, frankly, the problem of anxiety and depression is very prevalent here.
Right.
So it's almost like being Caucasian and having that experience is a remedy to depression. Because when you truly think about this, to be able to cope with day to day, you have to think about something bigger than yourself.
Right.
And that's what Caucasian mountains taught me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Um, Amazing. How do you connect with your lineage? How did you connect with your lineage in the past, and how are you doing so as an adult?
The first time I ever felt connected to my culture was through dance. Most of your viewers already know about Lezginka or Caucasian dance, Achiroli, etc. So I was in the village, and my cousin said one day that you and I are going to our neighbor's house. There is a going away party for their son who is joining the army, and you need to know how to dance.
Right.
I've never actually danced willingly.
Oh, you're one of those.
It's one of those things like, go.
Yeah.
Don't embarrass the family. Go. And
Aw.
the fear I had was that this is an intimate circle. This is not a wedding. So that means if I mess up, everybody will see it and they will be
Oh.
talking about this for a long
Oh.
time. Obviously, they're not going to talk about this, but in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to be the biggest laughing stock at that event.
Right.
She said, let's teach you how to dance. She gave me some moves. She taught me, and she said, you're ready. Let's go.
Awesome.
When we got there, I had two things in my head. I had two choices rather. One was to dance and embarrass myself. And the other one was to say in my language politely that, no, thank you, I don't want to dance.
Right.
At that time, I didn't speak my language well.
Oh.
So it was choosing between the lesser evil. Do I embarrass myself when I speak my language, or do I embarrass myself when I dance? And I decided to do the dancing part. But subhanAllah, I remember in that moment, as soon as we started dancing, it felt like it was an initiation ball.
Wow.
You know how girls would go into the society and get introduced through dance? I felt that was my first coming of age,
Wow.
almost, and my first time dancing and as an adult, and I instantly felt at home.
And now you have a page, Dance Like
Caucasian.
Caucasian. It seems like you've really kind of, you know, put yourself into it. It seems like it's just a part of your culture that you've really let in, and you're so good at it. You have such an elegance, of course, the classic Caucasian, swan-like elegance in your dancing style. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I good point. I just put the two together. Yeah, I've come a long way.
Yeah.
And I think what helped me is actually accepting my culture and not feeling ashamed of it, because I grew up in Russia, and simply speaking my language out in public, I felt was embarrassing.
Right.
Because you would hear oftentimes Russians say, I will say that in Russian, говори на нормальном, which is, speak the normal language.
Right.
And the normal is anything like, normal to them is Russian language.
Right.
So
Right.
I think I've come a long way accepting who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just on this side of the world, we have identity issues out the door, in the West. I'm sure you've become acquainted since you've been here. Culture, identity wars and culture wars, and just how it really does feel like you are struggling to hold on to who you are. I get a lot of comments about, what is the point of your page? Why do you care so much if anyone else calls themselves Caucasian? I'm like, man, you don't get it.
They don't.
It's such an important thing to just feel like you get to be comfortable in who you are. You get a good positive word for yourself, without feeling like, people are trying to erase parts of you because they don't like it.
It's also ironic, I have to say. When I
Yeah.
first moved to America, I did not know that I was white.
Welcome.
I grew up with people telling us that we're black, that we're darky, that we're черные. So the first time I learned what the meaning of the word Caucasian meant was from the race standpoint.
Right.
I was like, wow, okay. So I'm not black.
It's so weird.
Really strange to say that,
Right.
especially in English, because people will think, oh, like, what is she? Is she mad? What is she talking about?
Right.
But just like something is your reality doesn't mean it's mine. So I respect yours, you respect mine. So for me, growing up in Russia, I didn't think I was white because that's what was told to us by Russians. Anyway, then I was very impressed by the fact that, oh, so by the way, Caucasian means that you are white and you're from the Caucasus.
Oh.
Until I realized, no, it's not together.
Right.
People don't associate those things together. And so
Right.
now I'm like, okay, I want to take that word back.
Right.
And the work that you're doing is incredibly important. Just yesterday, I was at the dinner and somebody asked me, what do you miss the most about homeland? And I said, being on Caucasian land. And the person chuckled and he said, oh, you know what Caucasian means, right? You mean, and I said, you mean the original meaning?
Yeah. And that's how these little interactions, that's how we get it back. That's how we get it back among our circles, among our peers. Yeah, I've had several moments like that when I was working before I had kids, and it never clicked. It didn't, even for me, it hadn't clicked back then that, you know, I could say that, I could assert myself in that way. That, yeah, it's the original meaning of the word. Actually, do you know what it means? Good friend. Right? Serving up some tea. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Uh, with the compliment you gave about the page. It's, you know, I feel like it's one of those things that can be extremely, it's interesting, it's impactful, and it's a powerful story to know the history of the word. And there are so many good people in this world that as soon as they hear that, as soon as they actually understand what you're trying to say, they're like, no way, like they will never use that again incorrectly, you know, and these are the people basically I'm trying to reach. Um, so let's go to the next question. What's something you think is important that people should know about your culture?
The Caucasians are not just fighters.
Thank you.
Yes, we do have Hamzat Chimaev, and we have in Dagestan Habib, but we're poets. Think of Rasul Kamzatov. We are musicians, beautiful, wonderful Patimar Kagirova. We're speakers, we're dancers. There's this gorgeous Caucasian dance group called Lizginka Show Group. Highly recommend to check them out. We are politicians. We are imams. Think of Abu Marsa Sedlinsky, for instance. People have different opinions of him, but he undeniably changed the social and political paradigm in Russia. And in my stance, the fact that he was able to give the voice to the Muslims in the Caucasus, do it in such eloquent way, penetrate the cement of Russian propaganda, and stay alive, I think that's a case study that Muslims in the West and non-Muslims as well should take in and study.
Wow.
Because to me, that is far greater accomplishment than fighting in an octagon.
Great. We also have, you mentioned artists, we have dancers, we have engineers, we have authors, we have, I mean, these are, it's a society, you know, and so you mentioned fighters, this is a male, and then for the women, there's a lot of interesting stereotypes that come with our women as well. And I could talk about this for a week straight.
What's the biggest stereotype about
Just
women?
that, you know, that we're beautiful, that's, I mean, that's the most important thing. That's the most important
It
thing.
starts and ends
Yeah. And with beautiful comes like quiet, dainty, you know, that we are you know, a hyper feminine type of thing, but you know, we have a very wide variety of, you know, types of women as well. Like we have, even historically, we've had women fighters, you know, very athletic, strong women that have fought with men. So there's a lot there, and I don't feel like it does us any justice just to be like pretty, you know, like on the side, oh, they're very pretty, and then as soon as you have an opinion or you have a, you know, something you want to share, you know, you get, for me personally, this has been my experience sometimes, that I get treated a little bit like a child, because that's not in my realm of what I can or should be talking about. So
Yeah.
actually this page is a problem for some people, because it just comes across like, what do you think you're doing here? Like, go find something pretty to do, you know? I get that sometimes.
Well, this is an interesting discussion. I've recently learned about the history of fetishizing Caucasian women in Turkey. And I used to get a lot of comments from and messages from Turkish men like, "Will you marry me?" Things like that. And I would just like brush them off and not think about them until a Caucasian friend told me about the history of fetishizing Caucasian women, and it's not so funny anymore.
No, it's not. It's incredibly, there's so much pain behind that. So much generational pain, and that stuff doesn't go away, you know. The same way that you said when you were in Russia, and then people would tell you, like, you would got the messaging basically that you're not white, you're black.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can
Like, look at me, look at
yeah,
me.
I know.
How is that?
I,
I cannot comprehend intellectually. How can a Russian person look at me
yeah,
and say that I'm darky, that I'm черная,
yeah,
that I'm black?
yeah, yeah. So, but what happens is when, and this happens in America with certain minority groups too, is that when they get the messaging that they're trouble, they're, you know, there is a lot of negative stereotypes associated, you will find that people on a subconscious level, you know, decide, you know, I'm gonna just be that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be that. You said it, fine. You know, they decide I'm gonna be that. So like, you know, for the Circassian fetishizing, the Circassian beauty element, it's like we kind of, I feel like in my personal experience, I have seen that internalized in our society where that's a really, really important thing, you know, to be beautiful, to be Circassian and like fit a certain level of like a certain standard of beauty. And if you don't, then you just feel bad about yourself. You're like, why couldn't I be like all the other beautiful Circassian girls, you know? And it just like an inherent, it becomes like an inherent physical insecurity. And it's not necessary, you know, from a humanity perspective. Like we're actually all very beautiful, but nobody's thinking about it as deeply as you might be experiencing for yourself, you know, that negative kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Thank you for
it's hard.
sharing that.
Thank you. Um, what's a stereotype about your culture that you'd like to dispel?
I think, again, that we're not just fighters.
Okay.
I think that is number one stereotype.
So that's like, it seems like that's a pretty, because you've said that now twice. So is there anything behind that more than what you've said? I mean, is there like a, maybe something you saw, maybe, I mean, is that just the messaging that you've gotten in your life that, oh, you're from here, so talk to me about your fighting, or has there been?
That's been the easiest way for people to understand what Caucasus is. Immediately I say, oh, have you heard of Habib? I'm like, oh yeah, I have. Okay.
Right, right,
And that, yeah, that's been the only way that I can adequately explain to someone what is
right,
Caucasus. Because for instance, if like say I talk about different parts, the north and the south, Azerbaijan, Armenia, etc., Dagestan, Chechnya, and Ingushetia, oftentimes I say those names, and just recently I said Azerbaijan out loud, and somebody said, "Oh, Pakistan," and the person continued, and he said, "Oh, I have a friend from Pakistan."
that's America. That really is
And
America.
then I switched to UFC. Have you heard of
Oh,
Habib? Like, yes, I have.
yeah,
Or I'm blanking right now on the name of one of the prominent fighters from Azerbaijan, but it comes down to this.
yeah.
Let me tell you about this fighter guy from the Caucasus, and then you can make a mental connection.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. We need we need someone else, a global. I mean, for me, sometimes I say Cher. I'm not Armenian, but she's Armenian, and I say, you know where Cher is originally from? Hi, we're like we're cousins.
Isn't
We're
that
cousins.
fascinating? There is another thing that maybe we can touch upon a little later, but how we present ourselves within the Caucasus, Russia, and outside.
Right.
Because in, say, north of Caucasus, if somebody asks you, someone who is a foreigner or even within Russia, what's your ethnicity? You're not going to go around and
Right.
around and
Right.
say this and that. You'll say proudly, I'm Chechen, or I am English,
Right.
or I'm Lak. And that is it. But because we are a very unknown species in the West, we have to find where is that cultural reference.
Right.
Somebody like Kim Kardashian, for instance,
Right.
or somebody like Habib or Hamzat, so that we can help the blind get to the geography, to the map, and point them. And that is interesting because we also kind of, what we do as Caucasians in the West is that we feel united because we don't have grounds, not as many, to divide ourselves because people don't know about us. But back in Russia, back in the North Caucasus, you will never use another ethnicity as a reference.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can totally understand that. Even just from having contacts with other ethnic groups, you know, like I have a lot of friends from Afghanistan, and you know, it's the same thing. They have kind of a very similar structure. They're very tribal. They have several tribes, and they will never say, "Oh, yeah," referring to another tribe or another group to identify themselves. But exactly as you eloquently just said it, you know, out here we're just like grasping, like, okay, you don't know that person, who's another, let me get my phone, maybe you'll know this person or that person. And that, you know, that's maybe part of why on my page I feel comfortable kind of combining the Caucasus and speaking about us as one group, which also bothers some people, but that's okay. I understand why, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, as big as America is, you know, maybe even within America too, somebody from Boston won't say won't maybe reference someone from LA, for example, or, you know, something like that. So it's relatable. It's not just something within Caucasians, I think. Maybe just because we're such a micro minority, we have this, we really just want people to know, like, where on earth we are from.
I want to address a comment, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yes.
Somebody said that the three of them are not the best representation of the Caucasus.
Oh,
I agree. Why I agree? Because they don't talk about what's going on in the
right.
Caucasus.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to find people who have reached that level of success and still really, you know, shed a lot of light on the region. It's hard. I mean, that's absolutely correct. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I always think about Muhammad Ali. If
Mm,
someone like him, with the power that he had, refused to go to Vietnam and fight, why can't the fighters that we nowadays praise and put on pedestal don't do the same?
right.
I was at a fight in Brooklyn, a Barclays Center. I saw Habib fight with Ala Cuenta,
Mm,
and I was the most excited, happy girl on earth until at the end of the fight, he congratulated Putin on winning the elections.
yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say because the messaging is right there.
Yeah, that I have seen the criticism for Habib in that regard. I didn't even know this was a thing until the mobilization for the war was taking place, and it was as everybody who was, you know, aware at that time, um, his home, like, region, the Dagestan area and the Chechen area, were heavily impacted by, you know, the mobilization. And, you know, nobody really said anything. It was mostly moms that were making the noise, like they don't want to send their sons away. But nobody else really said anything.
Somebody said, "Can you blame him? He might have been." Sorry, I
And
missed the last part.
enticed,
Enticed,
Habib was probably, yeah, enticed.
enticed to do so. Again, in my opinion, if it's not the Habibs of the world, if it's not the Muhammad Alis of the world, then who is it? Who is the one to speak? Me
Right.
with, or you We compared to the following that they have, we're
Yeah.
pebbles.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this is a thing that I think people need to know about Caucasian women. We are strong. We feel the pain of our people faster than men in our communities.
Yeah.
Wallahi, and the strength that we derive comes from the ancestors and the history that we know. And despite us not having millions of followers or not having the same exposure as, say, Habib and others, we speak from the heart, and that's who we are as Caucasian women.
Right. For me also, and we talked about this a little bit, you know, the having family and having children, you know, I think about them, I think about their kids, and I think about my grandchildren, inshallah, one day. Um, you know, so I got like one foot in the past, one foot in the future, and I'm just trying to navigate the space that I'm living in at this moment. And just trying to put some respect on our region, respect on our people. The more you read, the more you learn, the more it's difficult to see, as you were saying, people who do have incredible platforms, just not say anything, you know, out of fear or enticement or, you know, a paycheck or I don't know. I mean, Kim Kardashian recently spoke on behalf of her heritage. Every once in a while, she will do that. But at this point, you know, in America, Kim Kardashian, it's not like, I mean, some people adore her. They love her. They'll, whatever she has to say or whatever she's selling, you know. But for a lot of people, that family is unfortunately has like a big stain on it. So it's hard. It's hard to just get like a credible, you know, voice on our behalf. Um,
I
yeah,
honestly think at this point we just need a voice.
yeah,
We're
right,
not in a position to pick and choose. Being able to say, let's pick the most credible choice implies you have people to choose from.
right. Yeah, that's true.
So you and I and anybody who's Caucasian and speaks English, use your privilege, because wallahi, knowing English is a privilege. If you're able to tell a story in English, it's like you exist
Right,
to the rest of the world. But if you don't, it's like you never even existed.
right. And that's something I see because out here, you know, there are a lot of people that have been living here or in generational diaspora that have lost their language. They've lost their native tongue. You know, their mouth has been colonized by whatever other language. You know, you can list them off for lack. You know, but that doesn't mean that you don't have something like that doesn't mean that you don't have a right to speak. You just have a different audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can connect with other people and make a point in a different space. And you can always work on building your native language and educating yourself. You know, that's a process I'm going through. I grew up hearing it and I can understand it, but it's very hard for me to speak it comfortably and with confidence. So I'm working on that. I'm 37 years old. I don't know, like in that regard, I think of, like I said, my progeny, and I'm just like, I don't know how that's gonna look down the road, but hopefully within their future circles that they can continue the love for our people. Um, and they just reach different people. I mean, like you said, it only takes one personality and you know, they could really bring a positive like light on our region, and that's worth everything at this point.
It truly does.
Yeah. So we talked about this one a little bit. You know, how do you feel about the history behind the misuse of the word Caucasian? What would you want to tell those who don't know about this subject? So we did talk about this a little bit, but if there's anything maybe that we, you know, you had in mind that you didn't get to say when we just spoke about it, you can, you know, put it here, or we can move on.
I'll just one thing that I wish to live a day, or in a very near future, I hope to be able to say I'm Caucasian without an hour-long history lesson,
Yeah.
without a potential verbal fistfight, and just say I'm Caucasian
Yeah.
and I'm proud.
Right. I was thinking about, what would it take in this country, for example, to make enough of a big deal about it that it could get on the news, like, that there's a petition, or something that goes viral, a petition, to write something about, like, to get a bunch of signatures. Yeah, I'm always brainstorming, like, how can I move this out of my phone and onto, like, a bigger screen. And if anybody wants to help with that, I'm more than happy to, work with you. I've never done something like that before, but it is through the effort of like-minded, passionate community members that we can take this topic farther. And I think it's worth it, because it just takes, like, a grain. And people will start looking it up. They'll start wondering, whoa, what is she talking about? What is he talking about? Jose said lobbying. Yeah, I mean, I didn't study political science. I'm not a politician, even though I do love politics, but, maybe
Would you would you would you ever go into politics?
I I don't know if I could physically handle it. I have heard that politics is an extremely taxing, and stressful arena. I don't think there's anything more stressful than dealing with other human beings, especially when you have, especially when you have something extremely you're passionate about, and there's a huge opposition. I mean, I argue with my toddler, and I'm just like, I don't know if I could do this times 100, you know. But if anyone out there has a background and this might, piques your interest, send a message and we'll see what we can do. Next question, and I am very interested to hear what you say about this. So the saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Do you think this is good advice? Why or why not? And have you ever been in a situation where you felt you had to, like, do as the Romans?
Well, in Russia, they have an equal saying, "Чужой монастырь со своим уставом не ходит."
Okay.
And I've heard these kind of phrases my whole life. I think when in Rome, do as the Romans do is heavily misunderstood.
Mm.
It implies complete assimilation,
Mm-hmm.
but the saying goes, do as the Romans do, not be as the Romans. I can
Right.
eat vareniki when I'm in Russia,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know, incorporate some of their day-to-day activities into my life, which we did,
Mm-hmm.
but I will never be them, and I never expect them to be me.
Mm-hmm.
So that phrase is heavily misunderstood. It does not mean be as the Romans. It means do as the Romans do, and we do it in America as well.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Um, so since you're, like, literally from there, and you've settled in the States, and, it seems like you've been here a while. Your English is amazing. You're very eloquent, and all of that. My family, we moved here when I was 2. And we moved here from Damascus, where, we were part of the diaspora that landed in the Golan Heights, my parents and their families. And then because of the 67 war, they moved to Damascus, and eventually they met and they got married, and then I was born, and then we came to New Jersey. And then I have lived in so many places in this country. I mean, America is not small. So there are so many layers to where I feel like I'm from, period. I mean, when people ask, where are you from? Um, but even with all of that, I do find myself when I'm in a certain setting, a certain part of me becomes more highlighted. You know, if I'm at a women's party with my, Arab friends, guess what? Syrian nude is coming out. If I'm in a Circassian engagement or wedding party, now I'm more of me is of that side is out. I'm able to play that part, and then being in a professional setting with American people and everyone is from somewhere. That's the one where I get to choose where I'm from. I feel like it's kind of funny. I get to be my most authentic self, and that person is a mix of everything. I speak Arabic, but I'm not Arab, and I'm Circassian. And let me tell you where that's from. It's kind of interesting. Um,
Do you ever get comments like, why do you differentiate yourself from Arabs if you speak Arabic?
oh yeah, I get comments like that from both American and Arabic people of Arab ethnicity. And sometimes it gets that people will get upset because they maybe it's from a place of like love and they want to feel like, oh, no, you're one of us, it's okay. And I say, it's a heavy influence in my family, but I'm not Arab. Like, I can't say that I'm Arab. Besides like a few parts of our lives, we don't really have a heavy Arab influence. We just don't. um, but I'm grateful for whatever we did get. Like, I love tabbouleh, I'm happy that we got to pick up the cuisine and we got to pick up the language, um, which there's so much guilt about that, being able to speak Arabic and not having my own native language in my pocket. But is there anywhere in your life now that you've grown up, here, that you are playing these roles? I mean, there's probably less roles for you to play. It's more simple because you're literally from there, like I said. But do you ever feel like you're playing a certain part? You don't look
I don't think that I do.
no.
Mm, no, I don't think that I do.
That's so beautiful, can I say? It's so beautiful. It's actually exhausting to live my way. It can be tiring. So it's very beautiful to know that you're just authentically yourself, in full color.
Yeah, I think the biggest blessing that I believe my Caucasian ancestry has given me is respecting myself.
Beautiful.
I don't chase men or women.
Right.
I don't belittle myself.
Right.
I don't ask for approval. And when you fought as much as Caucasians
Right.
did, and we literally did not have a single generation without a war.
Right.
We didn't have a single generation that lived peacefully after Russian occupation. So when you have that history as your backbone and the tears of your loved ones as the fuel, you sure as hell know who you are. And it's precious, it's temporary, and it's worth fighting for.
That's very
And I think that answers the other question that I was going to go into, which is the ancestry wisdom.
beautiful.
That makes me
Yeah.
that makes me stronger, knowing who I am and doing it on purpose.
In your family, because it seems like this is a fact for you about the wars that happen. How does that play out in family history? Do you guys, go back in your family history, like, oh, that war? I mean, how are the wars in like the timeline? How do you, um, where is their place? Like, do you mark your family history with the wars?
I think we could do a better job, honestly, with the timelines as well as the family ancestry.
Mm.
We just the other day I was thinking to draw a tree with everybody so that I have it, and I can continue adding to it. But I think it comes up in conversations over tea, frankly. The other day, we learned the news that my mother's cousin, his body was found.
Oh my God.
He was missing, and we believed that it was good news. We believe that he's still alive. He's just missing. We can't. Maybe he lost his memory. Maybe something happened to him.
Right.
Somebody else taking care of him. And we recently, I have to mention, there is a slight percentage that we don't know exactly how he died, just because we got a final confirmation from the government saying that the search is over, and it's been over 10 years, over 20 years, actually. But this conversation came up over tea. We talked about it, cried a little bit.
Right.
I remembered good things about my uncle, my mom's cousin, and we moved on. Frankly, when you have real hardships, this is what you do. You move on very quickly, fortunately or unfortunately.
I'm so sorry for your loss, for the confirmation of your loss. I mean, in Arabic, we say Allah yarhamo. I don't know what the equivalent is, but may there be mercy on his soul. That's very sad. Um, do you have any hopes for the future of the community you're a part of, or the Caucasus in general?
If today somebody tells me Caucasus will never be free, I will laugh. It's like saying sun will never rise on the east. It always does. And yes, our sun is running late a little bit, but it will eventually rise, and Caucasus will eventually be free. The question is, what can we do? And it goes back to one of the points I made, which is speak up, use your privilege, use your knowledge of English to tell the stories.
To share it with your audience, right?
Share it with your audience, yeah.
I've had this conversation mostly with with males. It's hard to have this conversation with females. I don't know why, but to imagine a free Caucasus, I love your confidence in that. I find it so inspiring. When you think about that process, where does your mind, where does your heart go?
So I know that this is a very controversial topic to a lot of people, especially if they believe in the I forget the word that I'm looking for, but if you think about the sovereign borders of Russia, oftentimes people say that North Caucasus is part of Russia, therefore, and it was added as a part of Russia constitutionally and through legal means, therefore it can never be separate. To which I say Russia has occupied North Caucasus and is continuing to occupy the South. 20% of Georgia is occupied by Russia nowadays. So I don't really want to get into specifics about how you're going to separate the country, because we're not even there.
Yeah.
What we get stuck is the discourse of why even do this, because this is illegal, because it's a part of Russia. We need to start with being very clear. Russia is occupying North Caucasus. It's exploiting the resources of the Caspian Sea to its own benefit, not the national interest. That thing exists only in the privileged top class of politicians that use the money for their own purposes. Not just them can say, oh, I benefit from Caspian Sea, oh, I benefit from the North Caucasus resources. We, as I use the analogy of owning a home. We, as the landlords, don't get any benefits from our own land. So that's the first point is winning the discourse, the social discourse. It's super important. Get clear on the terminology, get clear on the reality of the things, and also get clear on the history. Caucasus never never became a part, has never become, or never intended to become a part of Russia intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
It was always a war. It's almost like an abusive ex-boyfriend or an abusive husband forcing you to be with him and saying, I love you, and that's why I'm hitting you on the head.
Yeah.
I believe that the Caucasus is in an abusive relationship with the Russian government. But number two is also winning a discourse within our own communities. I hear people say, oh, you don't know what you're asking for. People will not know what to do with the freedom. They will start fighting.
Mm-hmm.
The goats will start running away. The flowers will stop blooming.
Right.
Let us decide. My choice of freedom is not yours to choose.
Right.
And it's not like a retirement reform that Putin has issued where he changed the age you can retire from one number to another for the betterment of the people. No, my freedom of choice is saying I wish for free Caucasus with minorities deciding for themselves what path they want to take and taking full responsibilities for the outcomes.
Which is how we were for a long time before all of this colonization occurred.
Yeah.
Wow. So you do think about this a lot. And I know on your platform, especially because this is a crux, one of the fundamental, this type of topic is something that I think from my experience interacting with your content, this is probably something you get a lot of friction on from people, from viewers and comments and things like that. So that's something that I was so interested in hearing you explain, because I mean, on my page, I talk about a ton of different topics. I literally have, like, at this point, like a bullet point. Oh yeah, I like to touch on this and I like to touch on that and this and that and this and that. But for you, it's literally called Life After USSR. Like, you're much more focused when it comes to your content. You have a lot of experience with this subject, and you live there, and you have family that still lives there. So you, in my opinion, are an incredibly credible resource as far as this subject goes. And it's very validating to hear you speak this way, because, even though, like, where I grew up in a generational diaspora community, there's still a lot of anxiety to even come close to this subject. I don't know, as someone who literally, growing up in America, this word freedom, even in my, community that I grew up in, we use this word a lot, freedom. There used to be shirts, God bless all freedom loving people. Like, that's part of who we are, is this element of freedom. And it's not a small thing. So to hear you describe it that way is very validating, and I appreciate it.
America didn't teach us freedom.
Yeah.
You can't teach someone something they already knew.
Right. I feel like living under oppressive regimes, like, ones from the Middle East or wherever. I'm not going to call specific countries out, but I came to America as a refugee. Just to be clear, we came with that status. So, there is always a fear of, you can't say this, you can't say that. The walls shouldn't know what's in your head.
Oh, I've heard that so many times,
Right.
especially when I had political discussions with my family. It usually, for some reason, is in the kitchen. It's the trauma, USSR, generational trauma from USSR.
Right.
Don't say it. The walls can hear.
Right. Keep it to yourself.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
So, I mean, that's very prevalent, even for me, who I don't have any family over there that I know. I mean, so we still have that, and it's not a small thing to get on and just speak. It's very brave, actually. And you were saying earlier about Caucasian women, and there's a lot of it's not, that's the thing. Sometimes I feel like they think it's attention seeking, or it's like for some other purpose, and it's like, no. This is not how I would look for attention. I have so many other ways I could look for attention. It's much deeper than that.
To be honest, I don't really care.
Yeah.
If people like me, they like my content, that's great.
Right.
If they don't, that's good too.
Move on, right? Yeah. Okay. But thank you for adding that. It's important to hear for a lot of people.
And I think it can even go outside of this conversation. In your life, stop constantly seeking for validation.
Right.
Know who you are, do it on purpose, be unapologetic. And if you walk into a room and you're worried that people will not like you, well, guess what? There will be someone who doesn't like you. What are you going to do? What's the worst case scenario that's going to happen?
Right.
Are you going to fall on the floor and cry? Or are you going to get into the worst fist fight with someone on zero grounds?
Right.
Out of nowhere, an elephant is going to jump on you. Like,
I can't hear you. There you are. No, you're. Oh. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Very good. Good for you. There you go. Good for you.
Yeah. Otherwise I would get into yeah. So I just wanted to wrap up my point. Don't worry so much about what people think. And there's this one phrase I've heard that I always go back to, which is, you wouldn't worry so much about what people think about you if you knew how seldom they do.
Right.
No one is waking up and thinking about, actually, Caucasian, how is she doing today? Let me make her day worse.
I hope not. If that's you and you're watching this, please put your phone down and go outside and touch some grass.
Get a life. If it's you, get a life.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, do you engage in I don't see you really going back and forth with people. I mean, it seems like you say what you say and you just move on from there. It's inspiring.
Yeah, to be very honest, I don't have time. I have a full-time job, and I have my commitments to my family, and they have rights over me. I can't violate their rights Islamically. If my mom wants to spend time with me, if she needs my help, I can't violate her right and say reply to somebody on the internet instead.
Right.
But also, I am building up this platform so I can talk about the criminal cases. That's something I wanted to mention. That is the end goal. And those kind of long form pieces take a long time. Alhamdulillah, I speak Russian and I speak English, so I have this opportunity to research extensively. And I'm a very meticulous person. I was a nerd for as long as I know myself.
I love it.
So I will be going down the rabbit hole of researching and reading and getting the details right. So part of me not spending time on comments is spending time on something else.
Right.
I can't wait to share with you my first video, which will be on Ingusht's genocide of 1992.
Wow. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna, guys, if you're you're watching, so I've already shared her Instagram handle, but she is on YouTube. That's where this nice, meaty, informational, these informational videos are mostly. I mean, Instagram is not your base like it is for me. You're trying to really make this like a whole thing. So yeah, definitely go subscribe to her page. Keep her in your rounds, because this sounds so interesting. It's not when someone is providing such a valuable resource, it takes the load off of the rest of us. You are passionate about this subject, and I can go to you and use you as for a learning, like you mentioned, educational, way of gaining that knowledge. So that's awesome. I'm super looking forward to that, very much. Do you know how long until your video comes out?
It will be first week of October.
All right. Okay. I'll be looking for it. Very cool. So I don't know, was there anything, I'm sorry if I cut you off, was there anything that you were saying or
No, I think
to wrap up?
that, yeah.
Okay. Well, we have about 2 questions left, and then I'm going to give you a minute, as much time as you need to, if there's anything you want to share besides like what we've talked about, or regarding your work, your content. I'll just give you some time after we answer these questions so you can do that. Okay, so do you think culture could play a part in coping with anxiety, grief, depression, any of these sort of mental health issues?
Undeniably, knowing who you are in many cases is a remedy to depression. But I wanted to talk about logistics. What does it look like to know who you are? When you, in my experience, participate in cultural activities, what do you normally do? You connect with people across different ages,
Right.
the elderly, the kids in the family, people of your age. You polish that is communication skills right there.
Right.
Then you also polish your serving skills.
Right.
Because if you're part of the community, you can't really be selfish.
Right.
Some people are, of course, exceptions, but most of the time, if you're cooking together, or there's an engagement, you're helping out, you learning and polishing your serving skills. And the other thing that I wanted to mention just escaped me. But to wrap this up with a beautiful bow,
Right.
if you are in a community and you logistically inserting yourself into different parts of the community, that helps you to know who you are. If you're not in your community at this moment, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to be a part of your community. We are literally a dying species, and most of our languages are considered dying by UNESCO. So if you have that one person, a Caucasian person in your community, maybe you guys are not on the same life path. Maybe you're not in the same religious level. Reach out. There's always so much in common. I have so much in common with Christian Georgians than I do with Americans who are Muslims sometimes.
Right. Right.
We have history. We have culture. We have beautiful parts of our just being. Connect with that, which will help you understand who you are and do it on purpose. Be who you are on purpose. And it helps with depression.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, in the States, you've seen the headlines, you've seen everything, especially after the pandemic, the way that society has become so isolated. I'm always seeing articles about, especially men, in my age bracket, as millennial men, they're stuck working, they're not getting time to be with friends, they're not engaging. I mean, we are not just social creatures, we are hyper social creatures. We need each other desperately. Like, you need a crew, you need people you can fall back on. Which is why therapy is so popular right now, because people don't even have that. They have to go pay for someone to talk to, right? And I believe in therapy. I see a therapist. There's something from a professional that sometimes you can't get from the people around you. But, it is important to connect, get off your phone, go be with people. It can be uncomfortable, it can make you nervous. and I don't know how I don't feel like you might deal with this too much, but for a lot of the generational diaspora people, we come from a place where I've in my this is guys my personal experience and what I've seen. Okay, I'm not saying that we're all like this. Okay, like don't get mad at me, but there's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to culture. You know, I don't speak it. I don't speak my language. I feel like it makes me smaller, you know.
Mm,
Some people don't like to dance, like how you said. It's like they're really just it
yeah.
freaks them out. They don't like it. Ugh, you know, it gives them anxiety. There's so many little things, and we can just be nice to each other. We can just let people like normalize that, especially after everything we've been through in regards to what we've lost, our homeland, our language, for some people, family members, have any kind of shocked to return. Sorry, I'm reading Suhain's comment to return her history after leaving. Do you want to answer that question? Did our guest have any kind of shock to relearn her history after leaving the homeland?
So
Good question, Suhain.
I think one thing I've learned, and it wasn't in the media back in Russia, is what Chechen mothers did during the war. It was a couple of years ago that I learned that during the Chechen War, I believe it was the second war, and the first one as well, Chechen mothers, if Russian mothers who lost touch of their sons would travel to Chechnya and ask Chechen mothers to please let go of the prisoners of their sons, those Chechen mothers would go to their kids, to their sons that are fighting, sons in the community, and say, please let go of the prisoner. And they would let go.
Wow.
I always heard that Chechens are terrorists, that Caucasians are terrorists, that we are barbaric creatures, violent, disgusting human beings, especially during the war. And a few years ago, I just learned what our Chechen mothers and Chechen sons did during the war.
I also learned about Chechnya that Chechnya never and was never an antagonist in war. All of the wars that occurred in Chechnya were all in defense. So to say that people are violent, to say that they're all that, they never even like started these wars. And I think that that goes historically. You know, the Chechens never went out of their way to fight people for anything. Unless you came and attacked them, they would defend themselves. And to me, I mean, growing up hearing in American discourse about the natives, about the, descendants of, African slaves, about all of the cultural elements, generally, these people are so peaceful. They don't want any of that. They just want to live. They just want to have a happy, healthy life. But you can't attack someone and then say that they're the violent one. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so much.
Thank you. Thank you for
Oh,
that question.
of course. Yes,
And
such a good question. Yeah. And then the last question here. So it's a little long, okay, but I have a quote that I like to remind myself. I like to put it on my page every once in a while. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams come true, right? What does this phrase like mean to you? What part of you, part of your personality, what part of your genetic impulses do you feel like would make your ancestors proud? And what part of your life do you think their prayers for the future have been answered through you?
I will try not to cry.
I know it's hard.
Because I can't not think about, my grandparents, our ancestors that have never lived a day to see the fruits of their labor, the men and women that fought against Russian occupation. Am I my ancestors? Am I the wildest dream of my ancestors in any way? Did what I do make them proud or make their dreams come true? I hope so. I don't think I'm even 1% there. I think the world needs to know about what's going on in the Caucasus. The world needs to know that our sons are being killed, that our daughters that wear hijab, and just in general, any daughters of the Caucasus that are trying to do something for themselves and their families are being constantly targeted and attacked for their ethnicity, for their language. Even if you take a setting, say a corporate setting, and there is a choice between a Russian girl and, say, a Dagestani girl, and they both have similar qualifications, who do you think the manager is going to pick?
Yeah.
And even going back to more global problems, in the Caucasus and Chechnya, Kabardino-Balkaria, even in independent countries like Georgia and Azerbaijan, you still are dealing with the outcomes of USSR. They just took a different form.
Right.
We still are struggling economically. We are poor. We are so poor. And the people that made money in the Caucasus, you always want to ask, how did you make this money? We are persecuted religiously. So many incredible imams, like Abu Omar Sitlinsky, for instance, had to leave and settle in other countries because they were either going to be put in jail, made disappear, or killed in so-called terrorist explosion attack or Shahid attack. And then you would see them on the news saying that we discovered this, we uncovered this terrible plot. And then spiritually too, I feel like this has been a jail for so many Caucasians generationally, because they feel subservient to the Russians. Even my own mom, when I talked to her and I had a chance to listen to her conversation with her Russian colleague, it just triggered me. This generational pride that I have triggered. I will have to tell you the conversation to give you more details about what transpired. But let me just tell you the sentiment. The sentiment was, you are non-Russian, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't have the necessary knowledge, even though my mom is highly qualified medical professional. And me, as a generation after hers, listening to this conversation and telling her, Mom, did you notice how she's talking to you? Did you notice that she's being, almost like a first-class citizen in conversations with you? Do they always talk to you like this? She's like, I didn't notice it. What do you mean?
Wow.
I didn't want to get into an argument with my mom. I love her so much.
Right.
But I sat her down and I said, Mom, let's have a conversation about self-respect, because we've been stripped of our self-respect in conversations with Russians, in the conversations with the government, in social setting. It's almost like we can no longer make money in the right way because, we're again violent, we're terrorists, we are barbaric, we are not educated, we need that Russian teacher to come into the villages and save us. So all of that together, you have a generation, I would say not just my generation, I think we are changing slightly, but you have a chain of generations looking at themselves as second-class citizens.
Wow.
In all aspects that you can think of, and thinking that it's the norm. I always say, if jail feels like a nice place to be, what was my original thought was that if you in jail and if you are used to that and it feels nice, this is what I'm trying to get at. So if jail feels like a nice place to be, you will never ever want to be free.
Right.
So we are generationally, the entire Caucasus, sitting in this jail, thinking we got the long stick.
Wow. Wow. There's so many parallels to that, to everything that I've read, listened to, learned with the Black community in America. So much of that. And it's going to shock some people that I said that because a lot of the Caucasian diaspora messaging here is that we're not like that at all, which to me is, you know, baloney. It's not even.
We're blacks. We're blacks of Russia.
But that's, yeah. I mean, it's the same playbook. You know, colonizers and oppressors, they use the same playbook. It's extremely predictable, and you can see it from a mile away. You know, and my heart goes out. I mean, when you talk to your mom, what was her reaction to that?
She brushed it off.
Oh,
But
she was just kind of like,
she
okay.
was like, yeah, I don't see what you see.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, my father, I can speak about him. When I was growing up in America, and anytime Syria would come up, he would say, I wasted 33 years of my life in that country. And I would get so mad at him because I want to know what you're talking about. But, you know, his generation, they went through a lot, and it's very hard, I think, for men in general to talk about these types of things. It's much easier to stay closed. But of course, as I grew up and I matured and I learned and you know, time goes on, I understood what he meant. And it was this element of being made to feel inferior, being made to feel like you don't fit here, you don't fit in, and you're never going to fit in. You're never going to fit in. So just bend your knee and just accept it, and it's fine, you know. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't just swallow that himself. You know, we ended up coming to America for a long story of why, but the fundamental element of it was that is that you can't tell me I'm less than you. That's not going to happen.
And Caucasians experience the same things that blacks experience in America.
Yeah.
Every time I would go to a store, I would be followed by the security. Am I going to steal something? When I was 12 years old, me and my sister went to a store, and the security guards even took us to the back room to check our pockets.
Oh my God.
But always be told, black, darky, black, go back to your country. Physically attacked multiple times. Ever since I was a little girl, I was afraid to go to the playground. Let me think about anything else that blacks experience here. Employment discrimination. After I moved to United States and I applied for my first tech job, I deleted the photo from LinkedIn that I had where I had a hijab on. I thought they're not gonna hire me.
Yeah.
In Russia, you're not gonna get hired as in a qualified, high-paying job if you're wearing a scarf.
Wow.
The list goes on and on.
Right.
We are literally the blacks of Russia. Metaphorically as well, there is connection with the blacks in America, but also don't forget, just this week, Nazis in Russia were chanting, Russia is for Russians, not for the Churki, which is us. So yeah, there's a lot of in common.
So I'm having a moment. I'm having so many mixed feelings right now. I'm doing my best not to show my rage. A viewer said, unfortunately, us Africans suffer the same thing in our former colonies. I've had extensive conversations with this brother on this topic, very well informed, loves our region. So yeah, the parallels are blowing my mind. They make me very upset. And at the same time, I'm so grateful for, and this is gonna, okay, this is, I'm so grateful for the way that the community, the ethnic minority communities in this country, that I have been aware of them, that I have learned their experiences through their work, their hard work, um, and that I'm grateful in my life now that I can, what's the bridge, make a bridge between them and us and other people. Because sometimes when you are oppressed in any way, even in your home, it can feel extremely lonely and isolating. And I grew up in a environment where it was like we isolated ourselves on purpose because my parents were working to, and not just my parents, many families were like us. We are working to maintain a certain cultural
Yeah.
potency, you know? But as you grow up, you go to college, you mix, you see people and everything. And I'm so grateful for being able to make that connection, and just knowing that we're not alone in this, in our pain. We're not alone. Ethnic Caucasians, we're part of a much larger problem, and that there's so much we can learn from other groups who have had the freedom, or let's say the ability, to get up and speak. You know, I don't know in post USSR, post Soviet Russia, how common it is for people to write book after book after book or hold lectures on racism that they
Yeah.
have in the country. You know, I feel like that's not a normal thing there because it is literally life threatening, I think.
And Georgia is making the way.
Yeah.
Georgia literally now has universities where you can study
Wow.
Caucasus
Wow.
studies.
Wow.
And there's so much that we can learn from
Wow.
Georgia.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for you being able
Oh.
to connect multiple people. There's so many folks I've learned about from you, from sharing their stories, their chats, their posts on your stories. The other day, I learned about this Dagestani Lak brother
Right.
that you shared.
Right.
I would have never come across him unless it was for you. And it's almost like every time I see these people, I get this giddy feeling. Oh, one more.
Yeah.
Oh, there's more of us.
Right.
And thank you so much for doing that work.
It's honestly, it lights me up inside. It doesn't feel like work. I get the same feeling. I'm just like, cool, you know, wow. I feel like we're small enough but big enough that we can find each other and we can consolidate, you know, we can like lock arms and be a team towards something really, really good, you know, towards something really, really good. So that's incredible. So you answered all of the questions. If you have anything you want to share outside of that regarding your effort, regarding the way that you're spending your time, you're making your imprint on the internet, please feel free. And then after that, I'll let you go.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else on a Saturday
No.
morning. This is also, it resonates with me what you said about this not being work. I don't feel like I'm doing work. I feel that almost a responsibility. And as far as my content, I will be focusing in the next couple of weeks. I will be focusing mostly on criminal cases.
Mhm.
I would like to give voices to people that don't have voice, and I would like to start with talking about Ingush genocide, 1992, because let's be honest, if we don't speak the stories into existence in English, I cannot stress that enough. Knowing English is a privilege. And if you don't tell your stories in English, it's like you never existed.
Right.
And I can never think that there will be one day when I die and nobody knows about English people, or nobody knows about Chechens, or nobody knows about Avars and the minorities, Caucasians, everybody in the Caucasus. Right. There has to be an awareness, because we're poets, we are musicians, we're imams, we're politicians, we're dancers, we're fighters, spiritually and literally. And I want the world to know, because we have so much to offer. And there's so much that the world can learn from us, frankly.
I agree. I gotta agree with you. We are such an incredible demographic of people. And I'm trying to put all the flavor and seasoning back in the word Caucasian. I'm trying to, let's remove this idea that the word Caucasian is the same thing as vanilla. And I don't mean to insult people who really love vanilla. Okay, my husband actually loves vanilla flavor, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Caucasian meaning that, oh, there is no culture. Is so insulting to me. Did you find people that would talk about this subject? Reclaiming Caucasian. So reclaiming it, putting the color, the spices, the sounds, the movement back in that word. You know, one person at a time, if that's what it takes. So this lovely woman here, she's saying, can't wait to meet both of you to take your photos and write down your stories for a book. Our existence is resistance. When are you coming to New York, New Jersey? She's doing a photo project, and she's featuring indigenous people from actually the whole country that have been swallowed up by Russian colonialism and expansion. It's a beautiful project. But I'm so looking forward to everything that you have to share on your YouTube. Are you still making videos for TikTok, or are you kind of just incorporating everything together?
TikTok audience is mean. I don't like their comments as much. I do post there, but my main goal is to focus on YouTube.
YouTube, yeah. YouTube is, it's the reliable buddy, you know? You can kind of, it's not as crazy as TikTok or even Instagram, yeah. People go on there looking for information. So, okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. I hope that whatever you've said reaches far and wide. This person said, I mean people who lived the tragic events in '92 and would talk about that. So this gentleman is asking, are you looking for people to give personal accounts, or are you're going to be handling all of that?
I would love to have people share their personal accounts. However, I have to be realistic. People don't even know what Ingush is.
Yeah.
They don't even know about Ingushetia. So what I'm hoping to do in this first rounds of videos about criminal cases in Russia and about Muslim minorities is to heavily start with educational piece.
Beautiful.
And then give some timelines, give some atrocities that have happened. And then once I get enough education out of the way, then get the actual people, because nobody can tell a story better than the people who experienced it.
Okay, so my suggestion would be, guys, follow her on all platforms. And then when you see these changes, or maybe, you know, she'll put out a question, hey, if anybody wants to message me, give me your story anonymously or not, or whatever, you know, it will be the right time for her project. Amazing. I can't wait. I literally can't wait. Thank you so much for your effort and time.
And I pray that God gives both of us patience, and everybody who's listening, I pray that God gives you patience, and I pray that God gives you strength to be yourself unapologetically. Always check your intention when you come on social media or when you come into spaces, to know what you're doing is for the sake of God or for something greater. And don't be afraid to hurt some people's feelings. If you you know, this famous athlete once said, why did you offend this female reporter? She asked him something, and he said, well, I'm not afraid to hurt her feelings if it means protecting my wife's feelings. Don't be afraid to hurt people's feelings if it means protecting your culture and your ancestors' feelings.
Right.
Be yourself unapologetically, even if nobody understands you, even though if anybody finds your movements, Caucasian dance, strange or, you know, unconventional. Don't offend your ancestors' feelings, because that's what matters the most.
Right. Don't make yourself small, right? To appease other people, because they will find something else about you anyways. You just end up shrinking, and then you disappear, actually. Okay. I love it. Thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.